that they produced to describe their differences. Yeah?
Yeah, and you're talking polarities and differences. And I have a unique experience that I'm an American, and I pulled myself out of the American culture and moved into Germany. And I know that there are polarity issues, but come on, there's got to be common ground somewhere between the cultures.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. I think the common ground idea, the idea of the idea of universals. If people are looking for a really beautiful book to read, it came out about 5 or 6 years ago. Steven Pinker, a Canadian actually, a Canadian scientist originally, although he became a Chomskyite linguist, and now he's written this super book called The Blank Slate, which is about how, in fact, we do not come into the world as a blank slate. We do bring some basic human values with us. And from the appendix to that book, I met this wonderful set of ideas by an anthropologist. We're talking anthropology. We're talking social anthropology here, Edward. By Donald E. Brown, a wonderful book called Human Universals, which says, you know, wherever you go in the world, and here's another horrible slide with too many words on it, but I'll just pick 1 or 2 out. Yeah. Look at that, number 7 on the list. Isn't that beautiful? Wherever you go in the world, whether you're working with the Inuit in Greenland or some tribe of 150 people in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, one thing you can be sure about is that generosity is admired. There's common ground for you. If you can show that you are a generous person by the giving of gifts, by your attitudes about time and energy, about the giving of your heart, you will be admired. Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful lesson. And there's a whole cluster of things there. Look, hospitality, language, prestige from the proficient use of language. Wherever you go in the world, you can gain respect from people if you use words well. Yeah? And I think that's a wonderful general truth. Here's another few. Status. Look at that, about halfway down there. I am a status-seeking monkey, and everybody I meet is a status-seeking monkey. The ways that we achieve that status are very, very interesting. Is it because I'm wearing a more expensive suit than the other guy, or because I've got the right kind of family name, or is it because, you know, I've written half a dozen books in my life, and that gives me a kind of status? But I don't know if anybody reads them. But these are the common ground ideas that you were talking about. And within business, here's the common ground. Yeah? Right at the heart of business, there are 4 things. I was taught this in the very first piece of work I took as a young manager, many years ago. It's about things and money and time and people. I put them the other way around because I like to put people at the top. But hey. And any management question is about those 4 things in some combination. Yeah? And resources are always limited. There are never enough things. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. There are never enough people. And what we're doing always as managers and as communicators is thinking about the processes around those crucial things. Now, the processes that I can use in my little business with my partner are perfectly simple. You know, I'll say to her, why don't you get me a cup of tea, and while you're doing that, I'm going to do some arithmetic and find out how much money we've got left in the bank. Yeah, that's really very, very simple. That's a cozy little process. But when you get into a bigger organization, if you've got 30, 40, 50 people in an open plan office, then your processes become more elaborate. But hey, you can still walk across the office, perch on the corner of somebody's desk with a cup of tea in your hand, look over her shoulder at what's on her screen, and have a little conversation about the problem. How are you going to do that process when that person is on the opposite side of the world? You're just eating breakfast and he's just getting ready to go home. English is your first language, it's his third or fourth or fifth language. Maybe he speaks Malayalam, he speaks Hindi, and he learned classical English at school, and now he's learned business English, which is a different language, believe me. Yeah? Where we are at the moment, by the way, is this wonderful place called Mattock process. We're in the process of talking about process. But together with some friends, I've worked out the processes involved in virtual teamwork. This is my way of slicing the cake. Yeah. At any moment, we are working on, right, what we want from our virtual team. We want performance. Of course we want performance. Yeah, we want them to deliver. It affects the bottom line. We're in business for performance. But there are those four key headings. There's clarity, there's empathy, there's function, and there's process. Now those are pretty high level Greek and Latin words. Let's break them down and see what I mean by that. Yeah. Your processes are your ways of working, who does what and when and how. Now, if your processes are a little bit fuzzy, a little bit chaotic, a little bit make it up as you go along, and you try and export those in your virtual team environment, you try and ship those processes out to a group of people on the other side of the world, boy, you are in trouble. Before you try to export your processes, some people prefer the word procedures, but to me that always sounds a little bit bureaucratic, but make sure that they are tidy and clean. That means that all team members can be aligned on the same purpose. It means that anxiety goes down. If everybody knows what they're doing, they're not anxious, so that means creativity can flourish, and your informality at, I like this word node about virtual teams. How many nodes are in your team? Yeah. If you're informal at node A, you don't want to have chaos at node B. That's processes. Here's empathy. Yeah. Empathy is about looking at the situation from the other person's point of view. I've got a couple of teenage children, 16 and 15, yeah, and we're working hard on empathy because they both think they're the, I mean, they
the world
believe
revolves around them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's all about me. Of course it does. Of course it does. Yeah, it's essential. They'll grow up. Yeah, but it's about good manners. It's about seeing things from the other person's point of view, which means you don't get so many nasty surprises. Empathy is very good for helping you to predict things, yeah? And it means that nobody slacks, nobody is idle, nobody breaks things up, nobody disrupts things, nobody sulks, nobody goes all quiet. We haven't heard anything from Rajesh for some time, yeah? Is he upset? No, of course he's not upset. We understand what Rajesh is doing. Yeah? It's empathy. Function. It's about being flexible. Yeah, I was driven crazy a few weeks ago because part of your shtick is about customer service, right? And as a customer, I was being driven nuts by a certain telecoms company I will not name. There were problems between my broadband setup and my internet service provider, and, well, do I need to go on? But I spent hours and hours and hours of my life sitting listening on the telephone to some bad music while people in 3 different locations were arguing with each other. I knew they were, about whose responsibility it was to make me happy. Yeah, and that's all wrong. Yeah, strict functions is bad news in a virtual team. People have to be much more flexible. My colleague is not here, but I'm sure I can take care of you. That's the style. And finally, clarity. The right hand needs to know what the left hand is doing. Otherwise, it's misery for the company and misery for its customers. Information that is there in the central pool, because an awful lot of these online working systems, these virtual offices, are very, very clever at giving you a place to store information where people can access it. But please, 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 don't put information in there that is not clear and precise and useful, because otherwise very, very quickly people are going to say,